Hello, I am William Jamar Wright,
And I'm Hattie.
and this is our podcast, HattieJo. What are we doing? And on this episode, we're going to talk about a little bit about just Thanksgiving and how it's kind of transformed over the years, from when we were younger to college to even now here as adults living in the real world. But so for me, Thanksgiving is definitely a time I always spent with family, which I'm sure it is for most people. So for when I was younger, we would always spend Thanksgiving at a family member's house. So it's always either my Aunt Bob's house, who lived out in Woodruff, which was close to our church. We would all head over there, head over to her house, and have Thanksgiving dinner. All my cousins would come out, and we'd all hang around the house. There would always be we would always go into. So there was literally two rooms. There was the adult room. And then there was the kid room. And
we had the same thing. But it was more like the adult table and then the kid table. Sometimes they were in the same room, sometimes they weren't.
No, it was definitely separate rooms. And then the kitchen, everybody would go into the kitchen and fix their meal. And if you were little and you had to have your parents help you, then your mom would maybe go and fix your meal for you while you sat in the room, and then they'd bring it to you. And then all the kids would sit in the auxiliary kid room, as we like to call it, and we'd just hang out in there. And then you would always hear the grown-ups in there laughing and making jokes and talking grown folks' business. So that was kind of what it was like for me when I was probably in elementary school. And then once I went to middle school, we started going to my Uncle Robert's place. He's my grandmother's sister. He's my grandmother's brother, I'm sorry. But we would go over there. And it was
Uncle Robert at
yes. And it was very similar. We would all there would be the old folks, grown-ups room, and then the young folks room. And by this time, we had gotten really good at video games. So pretty much, we would try to eat as fast as possible so we could go play video games. And every now and then, there would be a couple of kids that would go outside and play football with the neighborhood kids because, of course, it's Thanksgiving. And as always, the Cowboys played on Thanksgiving. So, of course, that being my team that I root for.
Why you ask? Is he from Texas? No.
It's America's team, so you don't have to be from Texas to root for America's team. So we would all watch. Of course, after eating so much food as a kid, I used to eat like 3 plates of food before dessert. And
then 3 desserts. I don't know how many desserts.
No, I wouldn't eat 3 desserts, but I would eat 3 plates of full food. My brother used to joke with me. He's like, "You got a tapeworm, you eat so much," because I used to throw down, and I literally could not wait for Thanksgiving. But what was Thanksgiving like for you when you were younger?
It was kind of similar to what you described, and I actually find it hilarious that you also had the kids' table, the adults' table, our kids' room, adults' room. It was very similar. There was never really a rule on mom's house or dad's house. It was just the rule was if we were at one parent's house for Thanksgiving, then we were at the other parent's house for Christmas. But it wasn't like, oh, dad gets them for Thanksgiving and mom gets them for Christmas. It would kind of flip-flop, and if there was plans one year to go visit my mom's family in Indiana or something, we would, make whatever work. So it was, very similar, always fun with family, delicious food, just the whole day spent cooking food, and the kids didn't really participate too much in that, but it was just fun to have all the people around, and hear all the sounds and talk to everybody and catch up with everybody. And it was really just a good family time. But similar things, eat as much food as possible, eat it as quickly as possible so you could go continue to play games or whatever it was that was occupying your time before dinner that had to be interrupted to eat dinner. And so yeah, just a lot of fun. A lot of good memories.
Yeah, nice. So did you guys travel a lot? So did you go to Indiana a lot, or?
I wouldn't say a lot, but I definitely feel like there were a couple times, and it may have been for Christmas, that we would go up there. But sometimes, depending on... The reason I get confused is sometimes if it was Thanksgiving, we would still do a Christmas celebration.
Yeah.
It's like the Christmas and Thanksgiving, so...
Because they're
two
so
trips,
close.
There'd be a lot of times as we got older where we would go to Lincoln, Nebraska, where Scott's family's from. And that would be the same thing, just visiting, tons of fun.
Corn huskers.
Yeah, and again, sometimes that was Christmas, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And when it was in the winter, we would go ice skating on the lake because it was frozen over, so that was always really fun. And yeah, just the feeling like you're going on a trip and you get to see family that you don't always get to see. And several times Scott's brother and his family and other members of his family, his parents, his uncle would come down to Colorado to visit us. So just, there's always a good family celebration.
Well, Thanksgiving for me definitely kind of changed once I got to high school and into college. First of all, in high school, we were a successful high school program.
So Thanksgiving changed for you because of sports commitments?
Yeah, because of sports commitments and because we were good. So
it may not have changed if you were bad?
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have changed. It wouldn't have changed anything if I had been bad. There would have been absolutely zero changes at all. Or even if I had not played college sports, I don't think Thanksgiving would have changed. But especially in high school, so literally on Thanksgiving weekend, Thanksgiving week, we always played on Friday. So on Thursday, we were successful. So we would always, the Thursday, the Thanksgiving weekend, that is the week before the state championship game.
So when you say Thanksgiving weekend and you're talking about Thursday, are you meaning Thanksgiving Day?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Continue.
Is there another interpretation
of that? Well, I wasn't
that?
sure if you were meaning the weekend before Thanksgiving or if you were meaning there were games the weekend after Thanksgiving. But then, because then you started talking about Friday, but then you then started talking about Thursday night. So I was just trying to place in my mind, because when you first said Friday, I thought maybe it was the weekend before Thanksgiving, maybe you were going to go somewhere. But then when you switched to Thursday and that's actually Thanksgiving, then I was like, well, I'm confused. So, yeah, sorry.
So for our audience out there listening, we have not planned this out. We're just going with the flow here.
This is first take one, take only.
So, Thursday of Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving
Day.
Day.
The semifinals of the state playoffs. There's upper state champion and lower state champion. So that Friday morning, we would always have football practice.
So Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, was games for you or no?
Practice.
Thursday was practice, and then Friday morning was practice.
No, Friday was the game.
Okay, I misheard you. I thought
so
you
we played in South Carolina on game days is Friday.
Okay.
So we would practice the Thursday of Thanksgiving morning.
It's all making sense now.
And then we'd normally end practice around 11 o'clock or so. And then...
And this was practicing at your high school?
Yes.
So did this prevent you from going anywhere with your family, or was everything close enough that you could still drive to...
Yeah, everything was still close enough for you. But that was just a distinct difference for me in that, literally on Thanksgiving, Thursday, Thanksgiving morning, you knew you were going to be practicing football, and you were going to be with your brothers on my high school football team. We were going to be working towards accomplishing a goal. And
then instead of 3 plates of food after all that practice,
I would still have a good.
I'm kidding.
I would still have a good plate and a half, maybe 2. But I definitely wouldn't eat anywhere near as much as I did when I was younger.
You were small.
Yeah, but I remember Thanksgiving in high school, just like you wanted to be practicing on Thanksgiving. It was a privilege. It meant that like the season had gone up to that point the way you wanted it to go, and you still had something that you were fighting for, to go out and compete that Friday for a chance to play in the state championship game. And I remember like at that time thinking, of course, you start to realize not everybody is as privileged as you are. I had a family that was able to like provide Thanksgiving meals, and one of the things I distinctly remember is my like high school coach, Coach Bentley. He would
He's
invite.
now the head coach at South Carolina, right?
No, he's the running backs coach.
Running backs coach.
He would invite people over to his house for dinner if they needed a meal. All of our coaches, they didn't make it public or anything. They were just like, hey, if you don't have anywhere to eat tonight and you want to have a Thanksgiving meal, let me know. And that was really kind of the really tight-knit and bond that something that I distinctly remember from high school is just that like our coaches and their willingness to like be there for the team and the players. And if you didn't have somewhere to go, there was somebody there that you knew would look out for you and help you get at least that meal over Thanksgiving. And you can feel like you were there with somebody that you could count on. So that was high school. And of course, I went to college, played at Duke, played football. And one thing you don't really realize when you're signing on the dotted line of the NLI is that you don't really get a Thanksgiving break. So every Thanksgiving while I was in college, I was at Duke preparing for a football game. Generally speaking, that is the last week of the college football season. So what's better known as rivalry week. And so we would, all my 4 years, I distinctly remember playing UNC on those games. So it was very intense week of practice. Coach, we would always have like a Thanksgiving meal. And of course, the university shut down on. So we would all leave. We would practice Wednesday. Then we'd all go to the hotel on Wednesday afternoon. And we would spend Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning at the hotel. And just hanging out with your brothers. And of course, we would have to still practicing on Thursday morning. And you get to watch a little bit of football. And then you have, of course, a Thanksgiving meal, which is provided by the Duke football, the university. That was generally Thursday early afternoon. So we would eat probably around like 3 o'clock or so. And as I became a sophomore and junior, Ben Loebner, who we actually saw Ben this weekend at the Duke Wake Forest game. His family, Neil and Sue, his mom and dad, who we also got to see. Love you, Neil and Sue. They actually, they would come out all the way from West Linn, Oregon. They would come out for the games here. And so I was a year older than Ben. I was a sophomore. He was a freshman. So his freshman year, Ben's family came out and they invited me and a couple of the guys to go to dinner. We actually went to George's Garage.
Nice.
And so that was very nice of them, and something that I distinctly remember my sophomore, junior, and even into my senior year was them inviting me to dinner with them and their family and kind of taking me in as one of their own, and I really appreciated that. It was a time where I wasn't able to get back home to my family, but they kind of embraced me.
Brought the family to you.
Yeah.
Well,
So what was college Thanksgiving like for you?
So it had some similarities but some differences to yours, Mr. Football Player. I was on the cheerleading squad, so we also had to be present for the game. However, we were allowed to go home, but the policy was if you were going to leave, you needed to be back on campus with an extra day in case of any weather-related travel problems. So if the game was Saturday, that meant we needed to be like back by Thursday night, no later than like late Thursday night, so that, you know, something happened, you could travel on Friday or whatever. So what that translated into, since we would still have class Monday and Tuesday and often have midterms or exams those days, I rarely would go home. I know for a fact my senior year I stayed at school because I was working on grad school applications and just had way too much to do. And that was also the year that my group mates for my senior design project did not fulfill their end of the bargain, and so I had to stay in lab working on that, building baby incubators for Cameroon, Africa, by myself. And our lovely lab tech, Matt Brown, like, taught me how to solder, taught me how to do all these things, because all these things my partners were supposed to do. Anyway, I'm not bitter or anything. The Thanksgiving spirit was strong with me. Anyway, and
what was the project due?
So the project was due the week right when we got back.
Oh, on that Monday?
Yeah.
And they just were like, oh, it's not going to get done?
Yeah, and they had plans to go home, and so they went home. My mind was blown too, don't worry. Because I had done my part of the project.
So this myth that Duke students just do everything when they're supposed to do it.
That's not true. Well, it is true for maybe a quarter of the students. Maybe even up to a third. There's a lot of people that were similar to me in their habits, but also many that were not. It doesn't extend
over everyone.
It doesn't extend, but when does anything, though?
But there are stereotypes and things like that people try to make generalizations.
Right. So anyhow, that's a tangent. But I think at least 2 of the other years I did go home, but it was, again, for like a 2-day trip, maybe a 3-day trip if nothing was important happening on Tuesday and I could leave right after class or skip that class or something. So generally, it felt, if I was able to go home, it felt kind of rushed and it wasn't like a big trip. It's also really expensive to fly from the East Coast to Colorado, so oftentimes it was justifiable to be like, I'll just stay the whole time because I have to be here anyway, and I'd like to be able to come home for Christmas. So, but we didn't go to a hotel or have Thanksgiving meal made for us. So when I would stay, just any of the other people that were also staying, which were often international students or other students that were also from far away, would just stay on campus. And sometimes we would make a little something, usually just dessert, because we're just a little bit lazy probably, in the common area kitchens that they would have. Or if someone had a friend who was local, they might get invited back for a Thanksgiving meal. But generally, I just stayed on campus. And I think you mentioned before the university shuts down. It definitely gets a lot quieter, and many things are open at much different times, much fewer times, but there's a lot of people that are still on campus for the holiday, especially, like I said, international students. It's really expensive for them, but it's also not a holiday where they come from. So they're like, free time off, like, this is great. So there's a large proportion of people still there. And it's kind of cool because you really bond with the people that are still there when everybody else is gone. So that's what mine was kind of like. And then as a graduate student, it was, you get the university holiday of Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving as days off, but the rest of the time it's like, there's no break. Like, what is this break? You get 2 days off this week. You should be thankful. So I would spend it either studying, trying to catch up on stuff, or just, I'd stay. But just speaking of breaks and not going home, as a cheerleader, one thing you're mentioning, you don't think about it when you're signing that NLI, everything that's going along with it. Well, likewise for cheerleading, we also didn't get to go home for spring break or go anywhere for spring break because we had basketball tournaments starting, and usually there was the first weekend was usually the UNC game. So if it was a year where we played UNC at UNC, then you might be able to go somewhere that weekend before spring break, but we needed to be back by like the Tuesday or Wednesday because ACC tournament for the women, and maybe for the men, I forget the timing. But there was always basketball stuff, and so I never went home for spring break or and I only went on a trip for spring break my senior year. And that was a road trip to Hoover, Alabama with Melissa and Lauren to go see some of Melissa's friends and see her hometown where she grew up. So that one was easy because we could drive down and drive back at whatever time. But yeah, just the things you don't really think about. And likewise, coming back from school a little bit early so that you could be there for some of the early games, basketball season. So I definitely think that people underestimate what student athletes have to deal with. Like, for instance, the players this weekend, the game is at 10:30 p.m. tonight, East Coast time. That's when it starts. It's Sunday. We got class tomorrow. You know, they're not even going to be on a plane until 12:30 or 1. You know, that stinks. So hopefully they don't have any morning classes. Or if they do, they can take a nap in the afternoon or something. But yeah, so that's what my college Thanksgivings were like.
Went on a little tangent there. Fighting for the rights of student athletes and cheerleaders here through our podcast.
Cheerleaders are student athletes.
Yes, they are. So, keeping it moving here. So here as adults, it's funny because just as I was a student athlete, like I still work in athletics, and right after I graduated from Duke, I went into working as a collegiate coach, and then I came back to Duke and worked in recruiting. So I was still busy on Thanksgiving.
And still kind of on that college university schedule.
Yes. So every Thursday, we would still have a meal with the team. And then honestly, I would just go to the house and turn on the TV and watch a little football. And that kind of became my routine throughout the time that I worked as a collegiate coach and then worked in Duke Athletics with the football program. And you really kind of start to understand and realize some of the sacrifices that the coaches go through in terms of not being able to be with their family during the holiday season, during this Thanksgiving time, a time when we're supposed to be thankful for your family and bonding with them. Just for all of our entertainment, we have rivalry week, and like the kids are playing on Thursday. We never had a Thursday Thanksgiving game, which is I'm thankful for, but we'd always have the team meal, and then later on that evening, I'd be sitting on the couch watching football. And then, of course, I switched over from working in the recruiting office, to working in student athlete development. And I've been doing that the last 4 years now. And Thanksgiving has definitely been a little bit different. For the first time, my first year working in student athlete development,
Which year was that?
4 years from 2013. So my first year, I went. It's 2014 was my first year. This is my third full year in student athlete development. So 2014. So 2014 was at Thanksgiving, and I actually went home for Thanksgiving and spent some time with my family. And
Who
then
hosted that year?
I think it was my Uncle Robert. Once again,
Nice.
I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure it's Uncle Robert. And then 2 years ago, one of my good friends, Tyler Robinson, he and his family, they're from Roanoke, Rapids, North Carolina. His grandparents.
Virginia?
No, it's North Carolina. His grandparents, Big Daddy, and his grandmother, they hosted me. They have a big family dinner for Thanksgiving. And then on Friday,
I Every
Yeah.
year they have this. Great
So every year the family comes down for Thanksgiving, and then the Friday after Thanksgiving, they have a huge community dance. They like to call it. So each kind of like community families, they basically buy a table, and everyone comes out, and it's just this huge like celebration party. There's just joy in the air, and everyone is literally just having a ball. And I actually thoroughly enjoyed that going there 2 years ago, and being around Tyler and his family. And I really appreciated that. And it was Tyler for years and years had been telling me, Jay, you got to come to the family dance this year. Like, you got to come to the Thanksgiving. And I'm like, dog, I'm working this year. Like, I can't come. Like, I'm working this year. Well, literally 2 years ago, it's like, well, I don't have to work this year. Like, I'm going to go home to South Carolina for Christmas. So, like, I could come this year. So I was like, count me in. I'll be there. So I went up, and we had a good time. And then Tyler and I, after that, we went to the Wake Forest game and met up with Ben. So that was a lot of fun. And so, like, you really, like, as we said earlier, it's a time to cherish being able to be with your family.
or
And then
close other loved ones. They don't have to be family, but
yeah, I consider Tyler like family, so family. And then, of course, the past 2 Thanksgivings, been able to go out and be with Hattie and her family.
back in Colorado,
and,
that's right.
Yeah, so it's been nice, and I've enjoyed it.
Me too. Lots to be thankful for every year, and this year is no exception. So, with that, that's what we've been doing.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. And we'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye.